Chapter 4, Lesson 2, Compare and Order Rational Numbers. You will be able to compare and order rational numbers. A common denominator is a common multiple of the denominators of two or more fractions. The least common denominator, or LCD, is the LCM, or least common multiple, of those denominators. You can use the LCD to compare fractions. You can also use a number line. So when we're comparing negative 1 and 5/6 versus negative 1 and 1/6, we are dealing with negatives. So if it helps, think of a number line. If this is 0, and we have negative 1 and negative 2. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say we've got negative 1 and 1/6 would be here. And this one would be negative 1 and 5/6. Which one is bigger? The one that's bigger is the number closest to the right. So therefore, negative 1 and 1/6 is bigger. So be careful when you're dealing with negatives, because you automatically may have thought, well, they both have a negative 1, so that's the same. 5/6 versus 1/6, 5/6 is bigger. However, because it's negative, we have to have that reverse thought. Okay? A negative 1 and 5/6 is less than a negative 1 and 1/6. Negative 5 and 5/9 and negative 5 and 1/9. Again, if these were positive, I would say the 5/9 is bigger, but they're negative, so I know for a fact that the negative 5 and 1/9 is bigger. Letter C, we need some common denominators here. Now, I'm going to start by actually, let's see, can I reduce this? Let's just make common denominators here. 12 and 18. Well, multiples of 12 are 12, 24, 36, and 48. That's for 12. For 18, we have 18, 36, 54, and I can actually stop there because 36 is in common. So 7/12, it looks like we're multiplying this fraction by 3, and we're multiplying this fraction by 2. So we have 21, 7 times 3 is 21, over 36, compared to 8 times 2 is 16, over 36. They are positive numbers, therefore that number is greater, which means 7/12 is greater. Letter D, 6 and 9. 6, 12, 18, 24, and 9 is 9, 18, and I can stop because I have 18. 6 times 1, 2, 3. So we're going to multiply numerator and denominator by 3 here. And we have 15 over 18. And 9 times 2 is 18. So we're going to multiply numerator and denominator by 2 to get 14/18. We are dealing with positive numbers. Therefore, 15/18 is bigger, which means 5/6 is bigger. 1/5 versus 7/50. Well, 5, I know 5 and 50, 5 goes into 50, so I know that my least common denominator would be 50. You can list them out like I've done before, but that takes a while. Or another method, bringing back what we have learned in previous years, we can do factor trees. So 50 is 10 times 5. 5 is a prime number, but 10 is 2 times 5, which are both prime numbers. And over here, 5 is just 5. When we circle what's in common, 5 would be the greatest common factor. But to find our least common multiple, multiply this by what's remaining. 5 times 2 is 10. times 5 is 50, which is what I said before. So 50 would be our least common denominator. I can multiply the numerator and denominator here by 1 or simply leave it alone. It would be 7/50ths. And here I would multiply numerator and denominator by 10 and get 10/50ths. We are dealing with positive numbers, and 10/50ths is greater than 7/50ths. Negatives, be careful. 16 versus 10. Now, again, if we want to know the least common multiple, we can do some factor trees. This would be 4 and 4, which would be 2, 2, 2, and 2. And 10 would be 5 and 2. We've got a 2 in common. And then we multiply by everything left. 2, 2, 2, and 5. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 5 is 80. So our least common denominator here is 80. Well, 16 times 5 is 80, so we're going to multiply numerator and denominator of this fraction by 5. So we get negative 45 over 80. And here to get 80, we multiply numerator and denominator by 8. So we get negative 56 over 80. Again, we are dealing with negative numbers. Since our denominators match, we just need to compare negative 45 and negative 56. And negative 45 is bigger. Therefore, negative 9/16 is greater than negative 7/10. In Mr. Huang's class, 20% of students own roller shoes. In Mrs. Trevino's class, 5 out of 29 own roller shoes. In which class does a greater fraction of students own roller shoes? So here we have 20%. Remember, percents are always out of 100. So we have 20 over 100. In fact, I'm going to reduce that by dividing by 10 and get a fraction of 2/10. And what we are doing here is we are comparing the 2/10 to 5 out of 29. Okay, 29 is a prime number. Well, let's do some factor trees. We have 2 and 5, and 29 is simply just 29. So we need to multiply those together. Well, we would multiply 2 times 5 times 29. That's 10 times 29. 2 times 5 is 10. Times 29 is 290. So our least common multiple is 290. Which basically means I'm just multiplying this by 29 and this one by 10. 29 times 2 would be 58 over 290. 5 times 10 is 50 over 290. 58 is larger. So which class has a better fraction or a greater fraction? The answer would be in Mr. Huang's class. In a second period class, 37.5% of students like to bowl. In a fifth period class, 12 out of 29 students like to bowl. In which class does a greater fraction of the students like to bowl? So this one's a little bit tricky. We still put our fraction, or excuse me, our percent over 100, but because of that, because of that decimal, I need to get rid of it. Let's multiply by 10 here. And that will get rid of our decimal, and that'll put 375 over 1,000. I'm actually going to reduce that. I believe, let's double check this. Let's see if it goes in evenly. It does not. I believe they both are divisible by 125. Oops, clear. It is. And 1,000 divisible by 125? It is. So we can actually reduce this. You don't have to reduce it, but it definitely makes for easier numbers here. So 3/8 is our fraction there. So we have 3/8 versus, again, 12 out of 29. 29 is a prime number, so I know it won't have any common factors with 8. So I'm just going to multiply these by 29 and these by 8. 29 times 3 is 87. And 29 times 8 232. Here, I know the denominator is 232, and 12 times 8 is 96. 96 over 232 is larger, and that is in fifth period. So our answer is fifth period. Change the orders to one format of your choice, fraction, decimal, or percent, and then compare. Order the following sets of numbers from least to greatest, and always rewrite in the original form. The easiest way that I find is to change all of your numbers to decimals, and I like to do this vertically. We have 23%, which as a decimal is 0.23. We have 0.21, which is a decimal, so carry it over, 0.21. We have 1/4, which I can make to a power of 10. I can multiply numerator and denominator by 25 and get 25 hundredths, which equals 0.25. And 1/5, I can make a power of 10 by multiplying by 2 to get 2/10, which is 0.2. To make sure I'm all lined up, I'm going to add a 0 in here. Now I want to order from least to greatest. The smallest number is this last one, then 21, 23, and 25. But the key is to write them in the original form. So our first number is 1/5. Here's number 1, go all the way to the left. Number 2 is 0.21. Number 3 is 23%. And number 24 is 1/4. So these are our numbers from least to greatest. Letter B. 0.23 is already a decimal. 19%, move that decimal point 2 to the left, 0.19. And 1/5, we can make that about power of 10, which would be 2/10, or 0.2. Add the 0 to keep things lined up. From least to greatest, we have 1, 2, 3, 19, 20, 23. In original form, we have 19%. Then we have number 2, which is 1/5. And lastly, 0.23. I'm going to throw in this symbol, which you should recognize as pi. Now, pi isn't just 3.14. Keep that in mind. Let's do these one by one. 3.44 is simply 3.44. Pi, if we were to type in pi in the calculator, let's see, does this have a pi button? It does not. Let me pull up a different calculator here. If we type in pi, we get 3.141592654, etc. Let's pull in 3 digits. 3.141. So this is approximately 3.141. Then we have 3.14. And notice how I'm lining everything up. And then we have 3.4 repeating, which is 3.4, 4, 4, etc. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add zeros in these gaps so we can line these up, or we can order these easily. The first number, please be careful. We have all threes, so we can ignore that. We have 4, 1, 1, 4. These ones are the same, so move on. These fours are the same, so move on. 0 is smaller, therefore this is my number 1, and this is my number 2. Now between the top and the bottom, 3 and 3 are the same, 4 and 4, 4 and 4, 0 and 4. Therefore this is number 3, and this is number 4. And writing them in the original form, we have 3.14, comma, pi, comma, 3.44, comma, and 3.4 repeating. Now let's talk about some negatives. I still want you to put them all in decimal form. Negative 0.615 is already in decimal form. Then we have negative 5/8, which I'm going to have to divide out here, so we'll do that somewhere out of the way. 0, 6 times 8 is 48. Subtracting to get 2, bring down a 0. 6 times 2 is, I'm sorry, 8 times 2 is 16. Subtract and get 4, bring down a 0. And 8 times 5 is 40. So we have 0.625. And this is negative, so negative 0.625. Our last number is negative 0.62, which is already a decimal, 0.62. And again, add a 0 to fill in the gap. Now we want to know the smallest number. So you might say, well, 615 is smaller than 625 and 620. But remember, we are dealing with negatives. So what we think is the biggest is actually not. It's the furthest away from 0 in the negative direction. So negative 0.625 is actually our smallest. Then negative 6.20. Then negative 0.615. So when we order them in the original form, we have negative 5/8, then negative 0.62, then negative 0.615. Nolan is the quarterback on the football team. He completed 67 of his passes in the first game. He completed 0.64, 3/5, and 69% of his passes in the next 3 games. List Nolan's completed passing numbers from least to greatest. So let's start with 67%. That would be, as a decimal, 0.67. 0.64 as a decimal is simply 0.64. 3/5 I can make into a power of 10, which would be 6/10, or 0.6, and again add a 0 to fill in the gap. And then we have 69%, which is 0.69. These are positive numbers, so normal rules apply. Our smallest number is 60, then 64, 67, and 69. Right in the original form by looking all the way left. Looks like we have 3/5, 0.64, 67%, and then 69%.